Now, the standoff with North Korea and nuclear threats from Russia's Vladimir Putin have many of us really wondering, how worried do we really need to be? International tensions are clearly at one of the highest points since the Cold War. Paula Tutman spent the day talking to experts to get some much-needed context.
Yes, there have been nuclear tensions throughout the decades, but the ones being displayed right now feel particularly threatening.
It is kind of worrisome that these guys can be feuding and press a button and the whole world can just be gone in an instant.
As Professor Peter Trumbore prepares to teach his classes,
these are the books I'm currently using in my conflict class.
He's also able to use real-world events as his teaching tools at Oakland University. An expert on political violence, his view of the tangled web of war declared on Ukraine by Russia and the Putin threats of using nuclear weapons.
And the most likely scenario would be, a battlefield-sized nuclear weapon, which frankly are more powerful than the weapons that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? So these are not inconsequential. The risk that you run is that the United States responds in kind.
And then there's Kim Jong-un of North Korea and his seeming look at me moments. And the United States using threats of its own as guardrails to nuclear proliferation.
But the look at me isn't at the expense of the incineration of his country and his own death and destruction. What does he have to gain by using one of these weapons?
We talk about a trigger-happy finger on weapons of mass destruction, but Trumbore believes there's actually more to it.
The Russians have somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 tactical weapons. Those are not deployed. Those are kept in secure storage facilities around the country. And one of the things that we'll know, if the Russians are preparing to use tactical nuclear weapons, they have to move those weapons from their depots to the theater of operations. And that will be visible. Anytime you've got a major war happening that includes one of the world's great powers, it is a dangerous time. Absolutely.
But
is this the most dangerous time we've faced in the last 70 years? I don't think so.
So I want to kind of put a finer point on these thoughts. The abbreviated version is, even if these seemingly irrational men don't care about their own countrymen or what other countries think about them, one semblance of rational behavior appears to be that they do care about their own hides and self-preservation. In other words, reason to be concerned, but not afraid. Karen?
Always appreciate the perspective. Thank you, Paula. We appreciate it.